we're going to look at the zero product principle. First, we're going to factor x squared minus x minus 30. So this is the trinomial with a equal to 1. So we have to find two numbers that multiply to negative 30 and add to negative 1. So I would expect you to be able to do this. If we use x minus 6 and x plus 5, that'll be the factored form. The second one is using the GCF. So notice that they're both divisible by an x, both terms. So x times 3x minus 4. So that will be the factored form of that second polynomial. Now we're going to transition into solving equations. So we're going to start with some very simple ones first. X minus 6 equals 0. How do we solve for x? That should be easy enough to add 6 to each side, so x equals 6. And the second one, to get rid of plus 5, you subtract 5, so x equals negative 5. And then the last one, this one's a little trickier, but to get x equals, you get rid of subtracting 4 first by adding 4 to each side, so 3x equals 4. And then to get rid of the 3, that's times x, so you divide by 3. So x equals 4/3 is your answer there. Now if you went back and checked each of those, the idea being if you were to take 6 and substitute it in for x, 6 minus 6 is 0. That works. Okay, and the same thing for the second two. So now what we're going to look at is something called the zero product principle. And this is extremely important. The zero product principle states that if a times b equals 0, then a and or b must equal 0. So the basic idea there is, if you multiply two numbers and get 0 for an answer, then it should make common sense that at least one of those numbers had to be 0. So for example, if I told you something times 5 equals 0, wouldn't you know that that first number had to be 0? That's the basic idea of the zero product principle. Except now we're going to apply that principle to solving polynomials. So number 3, if we're asked to solve x minus 5 times x plus 2. Well, in the past, when we saw something that looked like this, what you would do is FOIL it. You would say x times x is x squared, and then x times 2 is 2x, and so on. And then you would end up with a polynomial in standard form. But that's not what we're asked to do here. We're not asked to multiply these. We're asked to solve this equation. So do we recognize that we're multiplying two things, x minus 5 and x plus 2? That's kind of like a times b equals 0. So we're multiplying two factors and getting 0 as an answer. So by the zero product principle, applying that, we know that one of those factors had to be 0. So either x minus 5 was 0, or the x plus 2 had to be 0. So now if we solve them just like we did up here, x minus 5 equals 0, we would add 5 to each side. So x equals 5. And just to show that that checks, 5 minus 5 is 0, isn't it? 5 plus 2 is 7, so 0 times 7 gives you 0, so 5 works. Same idea with x plus 2 equals 0. We subtract 2 from each side, so x equals negative 2. So if we substitute that back in, negative 2 minus 5 is negative 7, and then negative 2 plus 2 is 0. Negative 7 times 0 also gives us 0. So our two solutions are x equals 5 and x equals negative 2. So if we apply that same concept to each of these other ones, I'll put the answers up. And notice that all we're doing each time is applying the zero product principle. That if we're multiplying factors and getting 0 for an answer, then you set each of the factors equal to 0 and solve them. And what you might notice is when you get down to E and F, these are using a GCF. So there's an x in front here. So you set each factor, x equals 0 and x minus 4 equal to 0. And then in the last one with an F, 3x equals 0 and 2x minus 7 equals 0. And you go through and solve them. So once you understand the directions, and I can't emphasize enough that we are solving these equations, and when you solve an equation, you want to end up getting numbers for your answers. A lot of students will see this on a test, and they'll look at, say in part D, 2x plus 7 times 5x plus 3, and they'll just FOIL it and get 10x squared plus 6x and so on, and that's wrong. You're going the wrong direction. So just like Harry Styles, you want to go one direction, or the right direction. I have no idea if Harry Styles is in one direction, but I think he is. That's my terrible joke for the video. Okay, so number 4. Okay, so now we're looking at is solving these polynomial equations. Well, notice that these are now in standard form rather than factored form. So the idea is if you want to solve an equation, after practicing a few, applying that zero product principle shouldn't be too hard or too crazy. So what you want to do is you want to take your standard form and turn it into a factored form and then apply the zero product principle. So if you look at x squared plus 6x plus 8, it's hard looking at that knowing what x could be. You could sit there for an hour trying to plug in numbers for x to see what works, but you have to be able to solve these algebraically, which means go through the steps. So rather than just substituting numbers in, let's look at it mathematically where we find the factored form and then apply the zero product principle. So looking at this, does anything multiply to 8 and add to 6? Well, we know that positive 4 and positive 2 will multiply to 8 and add to positive 6. So now that x plus 4, x plus 2 is the factored form, we have an equation equal to 0 because we can't just ignore equals 0. So now what we have are questions just like up here. You set each of the factors equal to 0 and solve it. So you get negative 4 and negative 2 for your two solutions. Okay, and just very quickly, if you were to plug these in, substitute them into your equation, you'll see that they work. So I'll just do negative 2. Negative 2 squared is positive 4, and then 6 times negative 2 is negative 12. So if you take 4 plus negative 12, that's negative 8, and then add 8 will give you 0. And the negative 4 will also work. Okay, in part B, we have x squared minus 1x minus 20 equals 0. So now does anything multiply to negative 20 and adds to negative 1? Okay, so you can try that and see what you get. And then also try part C, and I'll put the answers up. So pause the video. So there's the solutions for B and C. In part C, that was a GCF of 2x. So 2x goes in front of the parentheses. So 2 times x equals 0 gives you 0 for an answer. And then the other one, x minus 4, gives you positive 4 for the answer. Okay, so that is solving polynomial equations using the zero product principle. Okay, we'll use that principle over and over again.